When life looks okay but feels off, this is where we talk about it all. Hi, friends, and welcome to This Shit Can't Be It, where we have real, unfiltered conversations about rising through all the hard things but reclaiming our personal power. Whether you're here to feel seen, get heard, get inspired, find tools of your own healing, your own growth, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm your host, Anne, and today we're diving in from burnout to renewal. And my special guest today is Rawinia. And for much of her life, she carried the belief that she wasn't enough, she wasn't worthy, that her journey is one of profound breakthroughs from corporate burnout, depression, finding renewal in heart, mind, soul, and even in Christ, from toxic relationships to choosing people who actually fill her cup. And today she's here and she's going to talk raw and real about all of it. Hi, Rowena. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Anne. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really excited to have this conversation and share more about my story.
Thank you. So let's dive right in. I cut straight to the chase.
I love it.
What was life like before you started to really notice and become aware of the struggles, like some of the things that were not keeping you in your authentic self? What was life? What did life look like? How was the
Hmm.
struggle starting to appear?
I really love in your intro how you spoke about like how life looks good on the outside, but like on
Mm.
the inside it feels really different. And
Oh,
that
turmoil.
was that was my reality for much of my life. And I think the most defining moment for me happened around 2018. And at that period of my time, I'd been working in a role for like a large kind of global retail company. And I'd been there for some time. Like I never intended to stay there for as long as I did. Like I had been studying psychology during that time, and my plan had always been to leave and start a coaching practice. But I ended up staying because of my skill set and leadership development. And while I was there, I also was in a relationship with someone. And it was like quite a glamorous type of business to work for. Like everyone would always say to me, "Oh my gosh, your role looks amazing. Like you get to go and work out for your job. Like you get to go and do all these really cool things, like go to all these different types of events." And then even with my relationship, like a lot of people were like, "Oh, you've got the perfect relationship." And like so and so like is just so incredible. And like the reality was that was when I experienced some of the worst depression of my life and even suicidal ideation during that
Oh,
time.
wow.
And yeah, and like I had like experienced depression off and on and like post-traumatic stress disorder because I lost my
Yeah.
mum at a young age. And so it was this thing that kind of was quite like up and down for over 10 years of my life. But this period of my life was like the height of it, I would say. And what I ended up doing was really creating a life based on like what I thought looked good, like what
Right.
society tells you should be doing. And it looks really cool on the outside, but like on the inside, like I felt like I was dying inside. Like my
Yes.
relationship was awful and really terrible. Like we didn't work well together. The job that I was in, like I constantly felt like I needed to prove myself, and I worked above and beyond my pay grade and ended up
Yeah.
training people who were like in seniority to me, which just was like not okay. And it got to like this breaking point where my partner like broke up with me, and that really like just not like lit a fire, because that's definitely not what happened. Like it broke me. And then within that breaking, it made me realize like, what am I doing? Like, why am
Mm.
I choosing all of
Rebirth.
these things. Yeah, absolutely. Like, why am I choosing all of these things? And so, kind of from that point then on, like, I decided to leave my job and decided to just be like, okay, you know what? Like, let's just start all over again and let's just try everything and anything, because at that point, like, I thought I'd tried all these things, like I thought,
Yeah.
right? But I hadn't. And so this time it was like I was 31 at the time. And so I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, you've got nothing to lose. Like, the way that my brain was working, like, it was like I could either give up, or I could just try, and I could keep trying and keep trying and keep trying until I've
Mm,
exhausted every option. And so that's what I chose, was the path of trying to find a way to
yes.
heal and to really live an authentic life. Like, you use
Mm,
those words there, because I hadn't
yes.
been. Yeah.
God love you, Rawinia, because I gotta say, I'm the same boat. Like I was 23 when my mom passed away. I had lost two brothers when I was younger. So at the age of 23, half of my immediate family is pretty much gone. And same thing, like I went through almost like a rebirth without even recognizing it. And like literally just dove into becoming a workaholic, which I call an acceptable addiction, because as long as you're working your ass off, everybody sees it as a great thing. But the problem is burnout is real. And the same thing happened to me. It's like I'm go, go, go. Like I was doing multiple positions at one point, and just like I was like the Energizer bunny until the
Mm,
batteries ran out.
mm.
And then you go through, like you say, a period of crash and burn in order to ignite. I love what you said, because this was your time to dive into your authenticity, and I didn't do that until my mid to late 40s. So I was still in autopilot mode, repeating the same process over and over again in my 30s. So God love you for recognizing that
Yeah.
earlier on and breaking that cycle, because at least it gives you more time to live and rediscover yourself and really jump into it. Because I know for me, jumping into it in my mid to late 40s, I was like, the instant belief that I adopted was, I've got a limited amount of time. This is the last century of my life, and I may not make it to 100, but by God, I'm going to try.
Mm, that belief, right? Where, even too, like, I come across it sometimes in a lot of the people that I work with, where it's like, I'm too old to start all over again. Like, and even the clients that I have in their 30s, and they're like, oh, I'm too old to start a new career. And I'm like, no,
It's
I'm
prime
not.
time.
I know.
It's prime time.
I'm like, you've got so much life left in you. And
Yes.
I think, when you're younger, I don't know about you, but when I was like in my 20s, I genuinely thought that, like, oh, my life was going to end when I hit my 30s. And then, like, after your 30s, like, there's nothing left in your life to live, really. That was my belief anyway.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
was completely different in that regard. I didn't even consider like milestones of like 30, 40. Like it didn't even cross my mind. And I seen some people like get sadly depressed when they hit 30. And I'm like, but it's just another number. It's just another year. And I was like, I floated through it. So it blew by. So I
mm,
wasn't living in my authenticity, and it blew by because I was totally unaware of what I was doing, what was going on around me. And I was just go, 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 go. So yeah, it's nice to see that you had awarenesses around this. So is that where it really started to ignite for you, was in your 30s?
yeah, that's where it ignited. And what you were talking about that kind of corporate burnout, like, that was my
Oh,
20s. I worked
mm,
in marketing and management communication. So I worked in agency world. And so that was, yeah, just crazy. Like, I worked 80 hours, like,
yep,
lots of,
easy.
like, yeah, easy, lots of nights where you just don't end up sleeping. And I loved how you spoke about it being like an acceptable addiction, because so many people glorify the hustle, And
Yeah.
what they don't realize is that actually underneath that, a lot of people are just hurting. And what they're
Yes.
trying to do is they're trying to find a way to avoid that deep
Avoidance.
deep internal pain that they're
Absolutely.
feeling that they don't want to address when they slow down. And because, like,
And
when
they're
you slow
scared to
down,
address it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's it. Because when you slow down, that's when you start to see it, right? And you're like, oh, wow, actually, I'm really unhappy. But the way that I avoid that, or the way that a lot of people avoid that, is by continuing on that hamster wheel of like just being busy and burning out. And, um, I mean, as you know, it's unhealthy, like,
Very.
because, it's not great for your mental, emotional, physical health, relational health. Like that was the biggest impact for me during that stage of my life. Like I wasn't able to maintain great friendships. I wasn't even able to, have a loving relationship with someone because I was just so obsessed with work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing my husband had brought up. He's like, how are we supposed to start a family if you're not even around? And his dad actually gave me a little slap in the face of a wake up call because I remember at the time, my sister-in-law, so my husband's brother's wife, she decided to stay home and raise the kids. Like humble and not easy. And I had no kids at the time. So she's home not working and I'm working my ass off. And I remember walking in their house and he was like, you work too much. You work too much. And I'm like, okay, you curse her for not working. You're cursing me for working. Like, which is it? He said, you need balance. And he said, neither. He said, it's great that she's home raising kids, but you're doing the total opposite and your life is passing you by and you don't even know it. He said, you're missing out on so much stuff because you're so busy. And I was like, I was. And I did. I worked to avoid all the chaos that happened after my mom passed. Like that was my
Mm,
way. You said it best, to avoid. And to slow down means I have to face that which I'm avoiding. And I didn't want to. So I just kept it going for years on end until I had my daughter at the age of 34. And I was like, no, I'm gonna have work-life balance because now I'm responsible for this little tiny human being. And I was still working full time. So I had my mat leave, but I went back to work full time. I just wasn't working the exhausting hours. And now that I'm where I'm at in my life, I'm like, even working for a living in that setting, someone else is still raising your child. Daycare, school, you're not there during the best waking moments of your day. Your prime time and their prime time, you're not together.
mm,
So it's I like that's a realization. And I know people are listening in, they're going to say, but I have to work for a living, I have to pay the bills. Yes, you do. But my message back is make sure you love what you're doing because that's where the loss and the waste goes. Because when you don't love it and you're just there just to pay the bills, then you get on that hamster wheel of existing and not really living or thriving. And we were
mm,
born, I believe we were born as pure and authentic as we can be, and we have everything at our fingertips, and it's through life experiences and programming that gets put on us that start to limit us. So when we're born we have unlimited potential, but life crushes that potential, and it's up to us to figure it out as adults how to unleash that again, because unlimited potential is what every single person on this earth is, I don't want to say entitled to, but has access to.
mm, mm.
And
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. I think, when you were talking about like the things that get put on us, I think that's often the thing that holds a lot of people back, right?
yeah,
Even I don't want to say excuses because like a lot of the time it is a person's reality, right? And so,
yeah,
you can have a specific reality, but you can still work towards that thing that lights you up, that thing that brings you
mm,
joy, that thing that you know that you're here to do, because I kind of share a really similar belief. It's like I always knew deep down that I was like meant for more in some way, shape, or form. Like ever since I was like a little girl, when I was a little girl, I genuinely thought that maybe I'd end up famous, which is like silly and wild, but I'm not famous. However, I do get to work with a lot of people and I do have influence in the communities that I'm in, which is, something that requires a lot of responsibility. And I always knew that I was meant for more in some way, shape, or form. And that's always shaped my decisions like along the way. Like, and a lot of people have questioned me, like, why have you gone and done this? Like, when
Yeah.
I've had so many different jobs, as an example, in so many different industries. And in New Zealand, where I'm from, like you're told you should stay in a job for like a minimum of 2 years. Otherwise,
Hmm.
it doesn't look good on your CV. I did
Yeah.
not do that. I was the person where I would go and try something because it interested me. It sparked my curiosity. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I get to a point where like either the company that I worked for just I did not align with their values, with the way that they treated their employees. Like I'm very people person when it comes to like how I work within like my own leadership capacity. And so if I'm not
Yeah.
seeing that happening in a business, I'll leave. And I don't care about whether or not it's like the 2 year thing. And so I've done that, and I've had people question me so many times over the years where I've like gone and like pursued a new qualification in a different
Yeah.
area, or I've just gone and tried something different, and people are like, "What are you doing, Rawinia?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm doing what I love and I'm doing what I enjoy, and this makes me happy. And so why would I not do that?" And there's been many jobs that I've done that you don't make a lot of money. Like for many years, for 9 years of my life, like I was a CrossFit coach and loved CrossFit, like was super obsessed by it. Like it really transformed my mental, emotional, social health. Like it really gave me so many incredible skills
Yes.
to transfer into so many different areas of my life and really helped me with I'd say managing a lot of the depression that I experienced. And so like I'll forever just say amazing things about CrossFit as like a sport or a way of taking care of yourself. But it doesn't pay well. Like I'll be honest, like you don't get paid well to be a CrossFit coach. You get paid hardly anything and you can barely live on it. Um, but I did it because I loved it and I
You
loved the
loved it.
people that I worked with. Like one of the greatest things was like seeing, because I worked with people from so many different backgrounds, ethnicities. Like, this one guy that I worked with quite regularly, he came in and he had like zero experience with fitness, but someone convinced him to come into the gym. And when he first started, like there was like this lap that we'd get everyone to run, and he couldn't run it without stopping and huffing and puffing. And I don't know how long it took, but like the first time he ran that entire lap without stopping, I like literally cried because I
Oh,
was
wow.
like, this is why I do this, because I'm helping people to get fit, get healthy for their families, for their
Yeah.
work. And that to me is just like one like really tangible reason why like I loved that as
Yes.
like a role and I didn't care how much I
And I
got
love
paid.
that. I love that. And I got to be honest, that's one, if I had any regrets in my life, that's one regret I have. Because when I was younger, I was very hyper, very active, physically fit, I mean, really fit. I was 97 pounds when I met my husband, and it was solid muscle. I'm only 5 feet tall, like I'm not very big. And I let my physical vessel deteriorate out of working crazy hours, and I ignored this. And if I had any regrets, that would be one, because I'm that now, I'm that guy now. Like I'm like, how do I rebuild my lungs, my body so I can start moving and working out again? Because now I'm in my 50s. So it's a
Mm,
whole new ball game. And I love being active. I love being fit, and I never stuck with it when I was younger because, like you say, you're programmed to do all these things. I didn't even know what I wanted to do with my life. And the school counselors back then were like, "Oh, you're good in math. You should check out this, this, and this." And I loved art. So architecture was one of them, but I was missing some key subjects to get into architecture. And accounting come up. Well, I took my first year accounting in community college. Back then cost me $3,000. I don't know what it costs now. I graduated, but I hate it. Like I'm late getting my taxes in every year. I hate accounting that much. I hated it, but they were like, "You're good with math." Nobody ever looked at me and said, "And your tiny little structure jumps the stairs like 3 and 4 stairs at a time." Like they wouldn't let me be a hall monitor because I was running everywhere I went. But not one person said, "You're physically active. Why don't you look into doing something?" Because if I had of, my life would have taken a very different path. But
mm,
that's one regret I do have, because now I'm in my 50s. I'm overweight. I've got to rebuild that lung capacity, that endurance. There is some muscles. I keep telling people I have a six pack. It's just padded. And it's well protected.
yeah.
But I mean, I still have that muscle mass, because I remember pre-COVID I went to the gym and I was like, "Show me how to work out from home," because I hate gyms. I hate the smell of them, like everything. So I was like, "Show me how I can protect my previous injuries so
Mm,
I don't re-injure my body and do it safely." And then I'm out of here. Well, we ended up getting shut down from COVID, but even he started me getting into the weight training, and I actually enjoyed it. And I ended up doing karate. I was in karate at the time too, so I love the karate because that's like a guided meditation, and all the movements, like it's very methodical, like yoga and tai chi and stuff. Like it's crazy. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed that. And then COVID shut us all down, so I ended up getting my black belt during COVID when it opened back up for a short window, because he put us on Zoom to practice at home and keep
mm,
everything flowing. So the minute it opened up for that short window, I got my black belt, and then it shut back down again. And that's when I stopped going, because all the new material was angles. And to learn that on a camera was too much, and work was busy and it was crazy. And I had my child. So I was like, yeah, I'm good for now. I'll come back to it later. But stuff like that, like I love and I miss it. And like you say, there's that level of fear of getting back into it, because can I physically handle it and build that endurance back up? And I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember who it was now, but what they said stuck to me. And that was like, people in their 60s and 70s have been put in the gym and lifting weights and training, and their bodies came back to that 20-year-old physiology at that age. So
mm.
the fact that we say we're too old for stuff is bullshit. And when I heard that, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get my kettlebells out." So I'm back to weightlifting.
Yeah, yay. I love hearing that. I
Yeah.
love hearing that. Well, that belief, right? I'm too old. Like it does exist for a lot of people. And like I remember when I first started CrossFit, there was a woman who like came to the same class as me, and she was in her 60s, and she was so
Love
inspiring. Like I was
it.
just like,
Love it.
who she was tiny too, this little
Yeah.
Filipino woman, and she was just incredible. And the reason why she did it was because she loved to hike, and so
Oh,
for
nice.
her it was building the strength and the endurance for like her hiking and whatnot. And so and I just look at that and it's like you can do anything at any age, even with injuries, right? Like it's like about finding something that works for you,
Yeah.
finding be it a community or a coach who really understands your fears as well, because I think that when you can find a coach who understands, well, actually, like I'm feeling a bit um insecure about how I feel inside my body. Like that's a very
Yeah.
real thing that stops a lot of people from going to the
100%.
gym,
Yeah.
right? And but when you can find that place and you can find that thing, like
Yeah.
that's when you go and then you become a black belt, like what you just
Yeah.
said, which I think is
I know.
incredible.
In my mid to late 40s, I got my black belt.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. I'm like, that
Yeah.
inspires me, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think that there's so much possibility for anyone who's listening. If you're like, oh, I've always wanted to try this thing, and you know, you've
Just do it.
perhaps just do it. Yeah, just
Yeah.
start. Just, and if you're afraid, like this is something that I always say to people, is like, ask someone to come with you.
Hmm.
You know, like
The
you
buddy
don't have to
system.
go on, yeah, you don't have to go on your own. Just be like, hey, can you come with me to this first class, and let's try this together. And a lot of people don't like being a beginner. I think that's a really big thing. Like especially as an adult, like adult learning can be really uncomfortable. And like
Yeah.
I know this. I'll put my hand up and say I like genuinely don't like not being good at things. It's just something. But like when like I'm at this stage of my life, like in this next stage of my journey, where I'm like, there's been these things I've been wanting to try for such a long
Yes.
time, like since I was a little girl. And yeah, I'm like, you know what? Like I am a master at so many things, and I'm actually bored with a lot of those things now
Yes.
too.
Yep.
And so
You
I'm
evolve. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so I'm like, well, what can I do now? And what looks fun and what looks joyful and what does that look like? And so you know, when I move, I'm moving very soon in a few weeks. I'm like, I've already kind of started looking at different communities that I can jump into and different things so that I can I mean live, right? Like you were
Yes.
mentioning that, because I think that's where a lot of people get really stagnant, is they just keep doing the same
We
thing
do.
over and over and over
Yeah.
and over and over again, and they're wondering, well, why am I not feeling good?
Yeah.
And a core human need that we have is variety. It's like,
100%.
yes,
Yeah.
we need stability. Yes, we
Yeah.
need
Need the
routine.
certainty. Yeah.
We need all of that, but we also need variety. And that's
Absolutely.
when we really start to live, and that's when we really start to see things in such a different way, because it opens us up to all these different possibilities that didn't exist prior, because now
Right.
we're being exposed to different environments, different ways of thinking, and like there's only good that comes from it, in my opinion.
Yes. Yes. I dove into some Tony Robbins training lately and I heard him say, and I thought this was key. I even posted it this morning because it's something that's unconscious and we don't think of. So they say on average, statistics show that we run 40% on autopilot. I know for me, I was probably closer to 80%, no word of a lie. Like that. And that's where the hamster wheel kicks in because you're either growing and evolving or you're slipping back. We're never stagnant. We don't just stagnate. But it's that slipping back of that hamster wheel. And we know it's not normal, but we don't know how to break the cycle. And I said for years before I even started my own personal journey, like, I used to always say there's got to be a better way or this shit can't be it. The
Yeah.
podcast. That's where that name come from. It's like one of the sayings I always said. I was like, this shit can't be it. But it's in that shit that we're not evolving. That's why it's shitty because we're not evolving. But the minute we choose evolution to learn, grow, expand, challenge ourselves, challenge others in a caring, loving way, that's when the evolution happens. And I heard him say that if we're feeling anything less than, so if we're feeling depressed, if we're feeling sad, or even just in the moment, if we're just heavy and we don't even know how to label the feeling, stop and ask yourself what belief is driving this emotion? Because our belief systems drive our habits, which impact our feelings. It's all connected. And in turn, that affects how we react on the outside, how we respond to things. So it took me a long time, and I didn't hear this from him. I heard it from a different coach that the only things we can control is how we think, feel, and act. And it took me a long time to wrap my head around that because I was so reactive to what was happening outside of me. And I didn't
Mm.
feel I had any control of that. And it was in the learning of the awareness that I was like, holy shit, I do. Because when this happens to this person, they're reacting completely different than me. It has a different meaning for them. So the whole response is different. So when we tap into controlling how we think, feel, and then act, it changes your whole world, your whole life. It changes your outer world because now you're controlling the only thing you can control is your thoughts, your feelings, the meanings that are around it, which impacts your now response. So,
Mm, mm-hmm,
I used to say I had an explosive personality. So instead of exploding on people all the time, I'm now recognizing that there's a different perspective and there's things that I don't know. That if they're coming at me, maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they had a flat tire this morning and they already started off agitated. And it has nothing to do with me. So being able to recognize an alternative perspective of what's coming at me and what's happening around me has nothing to do with me half the time, and being able to respond more calmly and differently than what I normally would, situations tend to diffuse or not even get escalated because I have a different response initiative now than
mm-hmm,
just reacting. And
mm-hmm.
I found that key because if we stop and look at what belief system is driving this emotion right now, and then we start challenging, is it real? Is it really the truth? And what's the possibility of the flip side of it?
Yeah, I really love all of that and what you're saying there because like there are so many kind of key parts. Like you kind of spoke about choosing to evolve because I think that part there is like the very first part that a lot of people need to make that choice to
Right? Decide.
change. You've got to decide, actually, I don't want this anymore, and I'm going to choose something different. And then kind of from there, it's like building that awareness, right? Like I loved how you used the example, like in saying that you labeled it as like a personality trait, right? Versus a learned behavior, because
Right?
typically what it is, a lot of it is a learned behavior. And that
100%.
learned behavior comes from multiple different things, right? Lots of past experiences, typically, versus like the same person in the same situation, their learned behavior is completely different
Total
to
opposite.
and
Yeah.
so it's like, well, if that person can, then why can't I? And what are the skills? What are the habits? What are the actions? What are the behaviors? How are they seeing things that is different to how I'm seeing things? And how can I start to either adopt those things, replace those things with the current habits and behaviors that I have? And what support do I need along the way as well? Because like it's not going to be this perfect thing either. Like
No.
it's going to take time. Like I'm sure you can probably like relate to like that shift in okay being explosive to okay now actually I can be in the same situation and I'm actually really calm and I'm collected and that there is such a huge growth experience for any person, especially when it comes to being in relationship with people, like to be able to completely respond in such a different way because you've developed those skill sets. Like and I
It's a
and
new
I
muscle.
yeah, and that's it. Like I really kind of want to just like hone in on that. It's like if anyone's listening and they're thinking, oh, but I can't, it's like a skill, it's a muscle that can be built. And it's every time you catch yourself where, like if someone's coming at you and then you end up getting angry and you react, it's like, oh, okay, like building that awareness that you actually reacted in that moment, and then reflecting, well, what could I have done differently next time?
Yeah.
Maybe can I like just take a pause and take a breath and or take some time out and then kind of come back to the conversation, whatever's happening, right? Like
Yeah.
there's multiple different tools that you can implement when it comes to kind of creating these changes and patterns of behavior. But it really does start with that decision and that choice to change because you've you've either gotten really over the outcomes and the results that you're experiencing and you're like, you know what, I just don't want this anymore.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people it's almost like in the too late basket sometimes. Like I say too late, like
Yeah.
for me, like it was losing a relationship, and like multiple different things versus can you catch those things early on, or can you notice your own patterns and behaviors in someone else's story and be like, oh, okay, actually, I'm doing that same thing. maybe it would be worthwhile for me to take some time to reflect and actually ask
Mm,
myself, do I want to continue down that route and
yes.
continue on that trajectory?
Yeah.
Or do I want to start to make different choices, take different steps towards this other path, right? This path that is actually more in alignment with actually who I am at the core, because I know I'm not that person, right? I know I'm not that kind of angry, reactive person. But really, I'm someone who's loving and kind, and perhaps I just need a little bit more love and compassion in my life in lots of ways. And so, um, yeah, I was going to
And
say, I don't really know where I'm
yeah,
going with that, but
yeah,
I really loved what you were saying.
yeah. But you nailed it because it's not about ever being too late. Again, that comes back to a belief system and why is it true? Even saying I can't, is that true? Why can't you? What are the possibilities? If you could, why can't you? Instead of I can't, flip it and ask why not. What belief system is telling you that you can't? You know, and like I say, sometimes it's true. Like, you're not going to hike up a mountain if you're in a wheelchair unless you have a lot of things in place to help you get there. So sometimes it's true, sometimes you can't. But for the most part, the bulk of society, that I can't is nothing more than a false belief system.
Mm, hmm.
And y- like you nailed it. Like I totally agree with what you're saying. And that pattern of it's too late, why is it too late? What's making it too late? Unless you're like my grandmother, God love her. I used to tell her she's my benchmark. She passed away this year. She was 96 years old, and
Wow.
she never landed into a home until a year and a half prior. She lived on her own, hardly any medications. Thyroid was like the only thing she was taking, and vitamins, like no
Wow.
medications other than that until she landed in the home because she was starting to lose her memory.
Hmm.
And I used to tell her whenever I talked to her, I was like, Nan, you're my benchmark. You're my benchmark because she didn't let anything stop her. She lived as pure as she could. She was a very religious woman. I'm not super religious, but she was very religious. She knew that Bible inside out, read it multiple
Mm,
times, but she never pushed it on anybody, but she did her best to live by it. And the conversations I would have with this woman were just absolutely mind blowing reflecting back because back then I didn't know what I didn't know, but reflecting on it, knowing what I know now, it has a different meaning because of where I was with my limited belief systems, my limited perceptions versus now. So it's huge. So going from where you were to where you are now, what was the biggest awakening? Because I know it's usually very seldom people have that one moment. It's usually a journey of moments. But what was that pivotal moment for you to get to this stage where you decided that you wanted to be in business for yourself and help other people navigate?
mm, hmm. Um, yeah, I would say it's multiple things. That it's like wasn't like a pivotal moment. I just always knew that I would end up working with women, people, because people just opened up to me my entire life. Like I was that person that people would be like, "Can I have coffee with you? I want to talk to you about this thing." And I would have random people come up to me on the street and tell me their life story, and it
Oh,
would
wow.
just and it happens all of the time. Like I'll be like traveling, around the world, and I'll be at a bus stop, and someone will just start talking to me about all their problems that are happening in their life. And so I think it was just something that was like going to naturally happen. And I was going to say naturally kind of evolved to where I am now, a coach and an author and a writer. And yeah, so I don't think there was like a pivotal kind of moment as such, but a big part of it has actually been my relationship with God. And so when you spoke about your grandmother, like, really kind of living by the Bible, like I think that that's been like for me, a massive thing. And I didn't grow up religious whatsoever. For me, going on my own healing journey, that's kind of where I found God and built that relationship with God. And it's just really transformed how I see things. And like one of the scriptures talks about like renewing your mind in Christ Jesus and really like seeing myself through the eyes of God has really just completely transformed how I show up in my life, in my business, with others. And I went from that girl that felt really broken, um, and wanted to die, to
Yeah.
now being able to, like, I've just gone through like a really tough season in my life personally, that I had God through it all. And it was such a different experience to what it was like back then, because
Years ago.
yeah, because God was like my anchor. And when it comes to my business, like for a long time I was afraid to talk about my relationship with God and Jesus, but it's like part of who I am. It's part of like my own personal identity. And so it's something that I talk about, and not all of the people that I work with like love God, and I won't ever push it, like your grandmother, right?
Yeah.
On other people. I won't ever
Yeah.
do that, but I'll just continue to live in a way whereby like for me, I know that it transformed my life so much. And so I always kind of pray and hope that maybe by me being an example, it might get other people curious about, you know, actually, well, what does a relationship with God look like? So I don't know if that answered your question, but like that's kind of
Yeah.
like part
Yeah,
of it,
absolutely.
really.
And
Mm.
I love that because, like you say, you're into the God spirituality side of things, and I'm more into the spirituality side of things. But leaving that door open for people to pick and choose what path is going to work best for them is key, because it is belief in either a God, a higher power, whatever that is for individuals. But navigate that, figure that out, because there is something greater than us that's happening. And we have the ability as human beings to tap into it when we quiet our nervous system and our minds, our body, our souls enough to start grasping. So everything you're talking about, and even what I'm talking about, some viewers may not grasp it, but I remember that time when I didn't grasp it. I didn't get it. I'm like, I joined a group during COVID. It was on Zoom, and people were talking about downloads, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, what the hell are downloads? But I didn't get it because my mind was so busy, it was all blocked off. Like that was not something at that stage that I could even comprehend, and I felt lost. And, but there is a process of letting your guard down, be willing to learn, open your mind up, and gather the information and find the path that works best for you. If that's the Bible, if that's specific religions, then that's your thing, then go do it. Because it was that belief in something bigger than myself, something beyond myself, that allowed the doors to start opening to understand and receive information, what they refer to as downloads. We all have it, and it's happening whether you realize it or not, but information just pops in. Like, how many times have we been out functioning with people and we just knew something was going to happen, good or bad? Just maybe even it's words coming out of your mouth and it's like, I knew you were going to say that. That's the download. That's the information. It's having that sense of being tapped in and dialed in to yourself first and radiating that out to the universe and understanding what's happening. That, like, that connectivity is flowing all the time. It's just raw energy we can't see, and it's always flowing. And that's when we start to have information that comes in that makes sense, or the drop in of, oh my God, what about this? When that idea pops into your brain, that's a download. And I was like, I was oblivious to it. And because I was so oblivious to it, you ignore your intuition and your gut instincts. You ignore all the things that are guiding you and helping you navigate because you've got it shut off. And I'm glad that you brought up the fact that you're into God and the religion, because that's the tool for some people. They need that something to help them navigate that's not an outside person. Like it's not outside of us. We got to get inside. That's
Mm,
where the true navigation comes from.
mm.
And having that connection that's beyond us and other people around us is huge in helping find that navigation.
Yeah, I love how you spoke about like intuition, because that part there, right? It's like something that we all have, but so many of us are disconnected from because we're living on autopilot, as you say, right? And we're not actually taking that time to slow down and listen and kind
Yeah.
of ask, well, what's my body saying to me in this situation, in this experience, right? Like, actually, my body is saying to me that no, this is like unhealthy for me. Like, your body will tell you that.
Yes.
And I think that those things there really allow you to be able to kind of choose that path that is true and authentic to who you are, as a person. And, like what you were talking about, like is one way, and then, God definitely. But the other part that I haven't mentioned is that, so I am Indigenous Māori to New Zealand, and we are a very, very spiritual culture. And
Yeah.
so it is just part of like who we are as human beings. If you meet anyone who's Maori, like you can almost like just tell straight away that there is some connection to something greater than us. And a lot of our values and the ways that we live within our communities and our culture, it's a deeply spiritual way of being. And for me, that's like another part. For me, it's been like the parts that have kind of come from my own personal roots and my own, I would say, ancestry and heritage.
Yeah.
And, those are the things that have really kind of anchored me in my own personal identity and authenticity, because it's who I am, and it's not kind of like borrowed from, something that I'm not. Like, like
Yeah.
I'm like not indigenous, to America as an example. I'm pretty sure I'm not. I'm actually not certain because I haven't
Yeah.
done an ancestry kit. But like I'm not utilizing their practices because they're not mine. They don't come from
Right.
my own personal lineage versus actually, like within my own personal lineage, we have things
Yeah.
like midi midi and romi romi and multiple different things. But those are the things that really support me and like who I am, because it's
Yeah.
part of who I am as
Yeah.
a person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at some religions. So here in North America, like Catholics are strong, Anglicans, like there's multiple different religions. And then you look at Buddhism, which is completely different. Like they're heavy into meditation. And, other religions go into prayer. Well, at the end of the day, they're not that far apart, but different practices of how they go about it
Mm,
at the end of the day. But yeah, no, it's definitely interesting at how we all navigate. And like you said it best, we're human beings. We're not human doing. And yes, listening to our physical body, our mental and emotional body, because that tells you when we're off path. Like when that depression hits, or that low energy, or that exhaustion, it's all navigation of this is not the right way. Change course. Because it's signs. And I, like, for me, I ignored them for the bulk of my life. Like it just, I had no idea that that was a navigational tool because I had shut it down for so long. I didn't pay attention. I just kept bulldozing through. And
mm,
every time you bulldoze through, like you say, the burnout hits, the something hits, the physical injuries, the the mental handicap from the burnout and the exhaustion and everything that comes with it. And it all starts with awareness. It all starts with, hey, this isn't right. This shouldn't be normal. Or, like I said, this podcast, this shit can't be it. How many times have I said it? Multiple, probably millions. That's an indicator. And I wasn't waking up to it. So
mm,
the fact that you're like, Jesus, like something's got to give, something's got to, any of those terminologies like that, you're saying to yourself something you got to navigate, become aware, focus. Okay, I'm aware. What next? because it's in that awareness when you calm yourself to it, the answers and the path starts to open up and show the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was awesome. I so loved our conversation, Rowena. I love having these different conversations, especially people from different cultures, because you get a taste of the different ways to navigate. It's beautiful. So thank you so much for joining me. Anybody that wants to connect with her, I will have all of her contact information down in the description. And definitely don't hesitate to reach out. And like I say, if you want to come join me on my podcast, I've got a little QR code where you can jump in if you want to be a guest. But thank you so much, my dear, for coming on and joining me and having this conversation. We went down some rabbit holes, but that's fine. That was the whole point.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Thank you so much, Anne, for having me on. It was such a joy
Oh,
and a pleasure to have this conversation today.
yes, thank you so much. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk again soon.